Peter and I are very excited to be here this morning. It's always inspiring to hear from Roger and the work he does. And it's also inspiring to be in this room with all of you, people who really want to see change in this world, and especially for God's people living in poverty. Peter and I have been asked to share a little bit of our story, our heart for Africa, and why we support Opportunity International. And our work, or our interest in Opportunity International, really began back in the early 2000s at the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis. There were millions of people dying, and we wanted to help, but we didn't know what to do. But God did. And at one point, He took what was my long career in banking, He introduced me to microfinance, and He told me that surely I could make a loan to a woman living in poverty and teach her how to start a small business, and I agreed. But what came next, I didn't expect, and that was that the first country I was to travel to was the Democratic Republic of Congo. So in 2003, shortly after the Iraq War had broken out, I found myself traveling to Congo with an NGO that was interested in starting a microfinance operation. I can still remember that morning, getting up at 3 a.m. with Peter, driving to LAX, standing on the curb, saying goodbye, and I fell apart. The tears were streaming down my face. Peter stood there very patiently, listening to me tell him all the reasons why I couldn't go to Congo. Like, what had I been thinking? I couldn't possibly leave him. I certainly couldn't leave our children. I was just a mom from Newport Beach, California. But at some point, he picked up my bags, he placed them in my hands, and he said, "Jane, you need to turn around, you need to walk through the doors of that terminal and get on that plane, because I'm going to be leaving. I have carpool, and I don't want to be late." And with that, he turned, he got in his car, and he drove away. And I turned, and I walked through the doors of the terminal, and I got on that plane. The next 2 weeks were the most extraordinary weeks of my life. Congo was a war-torn country. There were armed militia everywhere. The poverty was unbelievable. And then there were the people dying. These were God's beautiful people, reduced to mere skeletons, straining to breathe. And I met a woman who had just lost her daughter, and she asked me if I would come home and pray over her daughter, and I did. And her daughter was this beautiful young woman with 2 little children. The father had already died. And this story repeated itself over and over and over again. And although the time wasn't right to open a microfinance operation there, I knew I would return. And so over the next several years, I traveled all over Africa, working with NGOs on special projects. And as I traveled, I saw the work of Opportunity International, and I was so impressed. And I wanted to learn more. So Peter and I attended a summit. We fell in love with the people. We fell in love with what they were doing, and we became supporters and helped with fundraising. Several years later, Opportunity was considering opening a bank in Congo. And I, along with a team of which Tom was on, were asked to travel to Congo and do the due diligence, come home and raise $6 million in capital that would be needed to open the bank, and we did. And in 2011, the doors of our first branch in Kinshasa were opened. I was asked to be on the board of directors, and I agreed. I have made over 30 trips to Congo, and yes, it is still a war-torn country. But hope does abound, and progress is being made. At the end of our first year in Congo, we had 3,000 clients. We went on to expand our branch banking system. We went on to develop new products to support what was the emerging small to medium enterprise market. And we built strategic partnerships to expand our reach. People sometimes ask me, is there hope for Africa? Is there really hope for a country like Congo? And I'm sure you know what my answer is. Hope abounds in Africa. You can see it in the faces of our hardworking, innovative, and determined clients. You can see it in the faces of our staff on the ground, who are the ones that really make it all happen. And more recently, just last week, hope was more than plentiful in Congo when the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to two people who have spent their life fighting the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. One, Nadia Murad, who was a victim herself, and Dr. Denis Mukwege from Congo, who has spent his life in eastern Congo treating women who have been victims of sexual violence in an ongoing civil war that has killed millions. Opportunity International is part of a greater global community, and we are committed to playing our role to ending extreme poverty and bringing about economic and social justice. And it is because of many of you in this room, your support and your generosity, that we are able to move forward with renewed optimism to do the work that we do. As for my work at Opportunity, it would not be possible without the man sitting next to me. He still gets up at 3 a.m. to drive me to LAX. He still holds me in his arms as I fall apart in tears. And he is always, always there to greet me when I return. Peter.
Mic drop, right? So it's pretty clear that Jane's career and passion and love for the people of Congo have incredibly, God, that was a hard, it was an incredible influence on me and my kids. Elizabeth is now 32, Erica's 30. She's affected our community, and for half our kids' lives, their mom has been going to Congo. Jane's, just her perseverance has changed our community in Newport Beach. Because you know what? It's all about showing up. And the women that know Jane knows that she's been going back and forth to Congo for 10 years on 30 trips. So my story when I pushed her through the door was a little bit different. I cried on the way home and prayed for her. Like, why Congo, sweetie? And she goes, Peter, because it's the poorest of the poor. I go, okay, that makes sense. Then the Iraq war breaks out, and I'm going like, oh, do you really have to go right now? You know, we're all sitting at home watching bombs drop in the Middle East, and she says, Peter, Congo is probably the safest country in the world because nobody cares about them. I'll be okay. So she went off, and 2 weeks later, we didn't have cell phones back there, so we really weren't in touch a lot, and she got home safe. I said, well, hopefully this will be the end of going to Congo, and she can stay home. Am I doing something wrong? I'm sorry. So she got home, and we were so celebrating, and I thought I did such a good job as Mr. Mom, taking care of 2 kids in high school. I had a pretty big job and working hard, but I took care of the kids. They were alive, no emergency room visits. And the phone rang. Jane went to pick up the phone, her talking. I go, uh-oh. It was our high school. They had been calling for 2 weeks because our daughter never went to school. So, note to self, when your wife goes to Africa, get home before your kids get home because they will erase all the messages from the school telling you that their kids aren't there. I learned that. So anyway, the years would go by and the trips would continue, and you know, it got better with phones, and now, of course, we have Skype and things like that. But it has a huge impact on my life and our kids' life. I've gone on over half a dozen trips, inside trips, some with Opportunity International. We went with John McNay on an ag trip, brought my partner and some farmers from North Carolina to Africa, which changed their world, changed their true north. And she continues to go. And then 4 years ago, I said, sweetie, I said, we got to take the kids to Congo. And she says, really? I said, they need to see what you do. They got to see it. Pictures are only so much. And after 30 trips, the kids go, yeah, Mom, glad you had a great trip to Africa. So we packed up in 14, and we took our late 20-year-olds at that time to Congo. Life-changing. We got there, we visited clients, tens and tens of clients, incredible stories. We met with staff. We had dinner with executives at night until 12 o'clock at night. Our kids trying to stay awake, but they were great. And then we also spent a lot of time we went to all 3 of the branches. There was one thing clear. We walked in those branches, or we'd walk down these dirt roads to see clients. Madame Jane, you've returned. You've come back. You always come back, Madame Jane. Their faces, their smiles. Madame Jane, you believe in us. You care about us. Here's this woman, the only woman on the board in Congo, at the bank boards, and she also serves on the board in Ghana. The only white woman on the board, only white person on the board. And here we are, going to the Messina marketplace with 1 million people getting up in the dark, working there, selling their goods, working all day long, going home in the dark, trying to eke out that $1.97. And here we were a part of it. And Jane's influence just changed the core value of our kids. So I just want to conclude by thanking Opportunity International for supporting my wife. It's her DNA. Congo is her DNA. Her kids know that. Our community in Newport Beach knows that. And I want to also thank our family of Opportunity friends, the Thorringtons and the Bergmans and the Hamiltons that were way before us. They were pioneers of Opportunity International, all 40 to 50 trips a year going to Africa. And they encouraged us and they've supported us. And I want to thank you all, Opportunity International and the board, for believing in Jane. Thank you all.